For 75 years, the National Basketball Association has been the pinnacle of basketball talent on this planet. And in that time, thousands of supremely skilled players have come to the NBA to leave their mark on basketball history. To narrow down all of these players to merely the 75 greatest is pretty much an impossible task. But luckily for you all, I took it upon myself to celebrate the NBA's 75th anniversary by ranking the 75 greatest players in NBA history. You're welcome. But before we get into this video, let me leave you all with a small disclaimer. You may not have noticed, but I actually don't know literally everything about the NBA and the game of basketball. And sometimes I get things wrong. So if you disagree, inevitably, because you will, when you disagree with some of the rankings in this video, just let me know in the comments, because, look, I got some people wrong. I'm sure I did. This list was tough to make. I did my best to put the research in and to be confident in where I'm ranking guys, but at the end of the day, most players who are close to each other are interchangeable, and I'm just going to say this, the honorable mentions and, like, the bottom 15 players on the list, you can basically move them around as much as you want, and I'm not going to have a strong opinion about it, because most of these dudes, again, pretty much interchangeable. They're all incredibly talented. The closer we get to the top, the more confident and set I am with where players are, but all these players are interchangeable based on your own opinions, and just let me know if you really disagree with something in the comments, because I might have been wrong, I might have misseen something, and I'd love to know why it is you disagree with my rankings. But without further ado, let's get into the video with the honorable mentions. I'm not going to spend a long time on these guys. I'm not even going to read them all out for you. But here they are. These are the players who I considered most strongly to make the 75th spot on this list. Several of them actually were on the list until further consideration. I remade this list like 17 times. It took me a while, and also this PowerPoint took me a while, by the way, so please like the video if you enjoyed, because, man, I am not technically gifted whatsoever. But these are the honorable mentions, alright? These dudes were all very close. If you have any of these guys in your top 75, I am not going to fight you on it in any way, alright? These are phenomenally good players. Like I said, several of them were in my top 75, and I just ended up having to take them out. They just missed the cut. But these are the honorable mentions, and with them out of the way, let's get into the real top 75 players. From 61 through 75, let me start at the bottom. George Mikan, Pau Gasol, Billy Cunningham, Nate Archibald, Bernard King, Pete Maravich, Tracy McGrady, and Ray Allen. And then on this side, we've got Manu Ginobili, Paul Pierce, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Dikembe Mutombo, Tony Parker, and Patrick Ewing. So let me just cover the ones that I think will be the most controversial, because I'm not going to go over every single player on my list. This video will end up being like 7 hours long. But George Mikan is on here simply because I wanted him to be. Alright, he's a very difficult player to rank. He played at the start of the 50s, and if I'm being completely honest with you, as much as I am a believer that most past players could still be good players today, I think if you took a Wilt Chamberlain or a Jerry West and you dropped them into 2021, they would still be superstars. But George Mikan, man, I just don't know. I don't know if he would be any good today. He would probably suck if I'm being completely honest. But he still won several titles. He was an amazing player in his time, and because of that, I wanted to put him on this list, and so I put him at 75. By far the least talented player on this list, but he still accomplished a lot, and he still was very influential to NBA history, so I decided to put him on here. Next up, Tracy McGrady. This is one that I think a lot of people are going to disagree with, because I know a lot of people really like Tracy McGrady. And even though he was before my time, I've seen the footage, I've seen the stats. Tracy McGrady was an absolute beast. One of the best offensive players in NBA history in his prime in the regular season. The problem with T-Mac is that he's arguably the greatest choker of all time, and he also had a very short prime. Those two things combined led me to leave him all the way down here at 69. And if you don't believe me, literally just look at his playoff stats. This dude never made it out of the first round. He was a career playoff choker. No, I'm not joking. He might be the worst playoff choker in NBA history. This dude was terrible in the postseason. And again, injuries cut his prime short, so that's why I have him all the way down here. Guys like Tony Parker, Manu, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green made a lot of finals, won a lot of titles, but at the end of the day, there were superstars in their team, and these guys were just all-star level players who happened to be there, so I couldn't put them much higher than this. Same thing with Pau Gasol, who's down here. He was obviously on 2 of those Lakers teams with Kobe Bryant, but they weren't superstars. They weren't superstar players. They weren't players who were leading their own teams to NBA championships, so I have them all the way down here. And then the last one is Patrick Ewing. I know a lot of people are really high on him, especially you Knicks fans out there, but at the end of the day, he made 1 finals in his career. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he made 1 finals in his career because in 1999, I think he was actually injured when his team got to the finals, and he got absolutely destroyed by Hakeem Olajuwon in that finals. Like, Hakeem literally toyed with him like he was a little kid. It was pretty embarrassing. He was terrible in that final series, okay? Hakeem made him his bitch. And then for the rest of his career, he didn't really do anything. He led his teams to some good, some good records, but they were overall not terrible teams, not great ones either. He just didn't do enough for me. So I have him at 61. I could definitely see the argument of having him higher, but I just don't think he accomplished enough. So moving in to 51 through 60, I have Dominique Wilkins, George Gervin, Reggie Miller, Anthony Davis, Bill Walton, Big Game James Worthy, Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman, Gary Payton, and at 51, Bob Cousy. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Sorry, I need a drink of water, so I'll just let you look at this for a second. It makes me feel much better. Now, controversy number 1 on this list, alright, this section of the list, this slide. Anthony Davis at 57. I know there are Lakers fans and AD fans out there getting upset right now, and let me just say, I do believe that by the time he retires, Anthony Davis will be in the top 50. Hell, he has a very good chance of being in the top 40. But right now, I just don't think he's done enough. He's won 1 title as the sidekick to LeBron James, who was the best player in the world at the time. And even though Anthony Davis was incredibly important to that title run, he was in the Scottie Pippen role. And if you remove that season from his career, he's accomplished very little. He had a lot of good seasons on the Pelicans, but he never led them anywhere. He never made that team a contender. And I just don't think he's done enough. In the opposite direction, you've got Bill Walton, who accomplished a massive amount in a very short time span, being the best player in the league for a season. He won an MVP, he won a championship, won a finals MVP, and then injuries took away pretty much the rest of his career. Now, I value primes over longevity, which is, I don't know exactly how much I value it over longevity, but that should be, I hope that's a theme that comes through this list a little bit. But at the end of the day, Bill Walton just had an incredibly short portion of his career, okay? He lost most of his career due to injuries, and because of that, I could only place him here at 56. There are some other guys here, Ben Wallace and Dennis Rodman, defensive juggernauts, offensive nothings, and Bob Cousy, maybe the most disrespected and memed player in NBA history. When you picture the stereotypical 60s white guy who wasn't athletic enough to play in the modern NBA, I know you picture Bob Cousy because he is a joke. But at the end of the day, this dude was the second best player on a whole lot of championship teams next to Bill Russell. He was the primary playmaker, the starting point guard, and he scored a decent amount too. This dude needs some more respect. I don't know if he could play today in the NBA. It's also harder for guards to translate these days because dribbling rules have changed so much. But this dude was playing over 40 minutes a game back then, running up and down the court. So don't act like your ass is more athletic than him. He would smoke you. Anyway, that is why Bob Cousy is at 51. Couldn't place him any higher, but I wanted to give him the respect he deserves and place him up here at number 51. Getting into the top 50. These are where we are starting to get a little more solid in my rankings. Guys are not moving around quite as much as they used to. And looking at this list, alright, let me read them out. Kevin McHale, Russell Westbrook, Dwight Howard, Dolph Schayes, Allen Iverson, Dave Cowens, Bob McAdoo, Elvin Hayes, Willis Reed, and Joe Dumars. Let's look at the elephants in the room, okay? Russell Westbrook fans, you're probably out there in the comments right now shitting your pants because you can't believe this man's not in the top 30 because he's so amazing and he's the triple-double king and all this crap. And all I have to say to you is, I've already made a bunch of videos on Russell Westbrook. Go look them up if you want to hear my opinion on why he's so low, but I assume you don't. If you're somebody who's angry about Westbrook being this low, you probably don't care, you just hate me anyway. So, if you do care, I have made videos on why I don't have Russell Westbrook rated as highly as many people do, but right now I do have him in the top 50 at number 49. Allen Iverson, very similar story. He's a dude a lot of people love. I live near Philly, I know. Sixers fans, they're freaking obsessed with this guy. I got into an argument before because this dude told me that Allen Iverson was the second greatest player of all time. Now, I know most Sixers fans are not that delusional, but y'all still really overrate this man, okay? And I'm putting him here at 46 because I think that's where he deserves to be. And the reason why is this. Alright, everybody comes back to that 2001 title run. It was amazing. He won an MVP, he made the finals, he had a great finals game. It was an incredible season for Allen Iverson. But if you remove that 2001 season, he pretty much has the same career as Carmelo Anthony. Okay? I know people are going to get offended by that, but it's just the truth. He has a full career, ignoring 2001, which is the reason he's here in the top 50. If you take that season away, he has a full career of putting up a whole lot of very high, very empty scoring stats, and not winning anything. Okay? He spent the rest of his career as a stat patter who wasn't very efficient, and took way too many shots, and wasn't a good teammate, and because of that, I have him only here at 46. And for the rest of these guys, these centers, these dudes, they're pretty much interchangeable. I have Reed ahead of Cowens, McAdoo, and Hayes just because he won 2 titles instead of just 1. McAdoo might have won 2 titles, but I think he was a role player. Same thing with Cowens. Like, they weren't the best players. Willis Reed was the best player on both of those teams, although Walt Frazier, in my opinion, should have gotten Finals MVP in the 1971. That was known as the Willis Reed game, where he got like 4 points in the last game because he was hurt. Walt Frazier had one of the greatest games of all time there. You should have given him the Finals MVP. Anyway, moving on. 31 through 39. Oh, so I actually forgot about this slide. So, spoiler alert, this is not actually a list of the 75 best players ever. This is a list of the 74 greatest players ever, because I screwed up, and in my original list, I miscounted, and only had 74 players. Yes, big blunder on my part, okay? I hope this doesn't ruin the whole experience for you. For the record, since I'd have to move everyone up one space, and I didn't bother taking the 45 minutes to do that because I'd already made slides of the 74 through the, 41 through 75, and then the honorable mentions. I'd already made those slides before I realized I miscounted within the 30s. And so instead of redoing all the slides, I'm just letting you know here, alright, I messed up. And for the record, if I had to move an honorable mention up, it would be Alonzo Mourning. So actually, Alonzo Mourning is the 75th best player ever, not George Mikan. But moving on from that, alright? Sorry I messed that up for you. Hopefully this slide being only 31 through 39 does not ruin your viewing experience. We have Walt Frazier, John Stockton, Wes Unseld, Jason Kidd, and Clyde Drexler, followed by Scottie Pippen, Bob Pettit, Steve Nash, and Rick Barry. A whole lot of incredibly talented players. Rick Barry and Steve Nash were absurdly close to making it into the top 30. They just barely missed the cut. John Stockton is one of the most difficult players to rank ever because he's probably got the worst peak of anyone within like the top 60 on this list. However, his longevity is just... it's something else. It's something else, and I have to give credit to a guy who is the leading assist leader and steals leader all time by massive margins. I just had to put him up here, just barely in the top 40. However, I can't put him over any of the guys ahead of him because he was just so much less talented than any of them. His peak was so much worse than the rest of them, and he also didn't win any titles in his career, so that goes against him too. Wes Unseld is a supremely underrated player. He was better than Elvin Hayes. He was the best player on that Bullets team when they won the title. If you don't know much about Wes Unseld, go look him up. He's kind of like a better Draymond Green. Dude was a beast, alright? Scottie Pippen was also very difficult for me to rank because he was always the number 2, and his prime was very short as well. It was really only from like 92 to 97, and then he started getting injured, he started having a lot of issues. But in that time, he was arguably the best number 2 for a long period anyway in NBA history. Scottie Pippen's a very good player, but he just never did anything on his own, so I can only put him here at 34, alright? Moving on, top 30, 21 through 30, alright? We'll see how controversial this is. Elgin Baylor at 30, James Harden at 29, Charles Barkley, David Robinson, Giannis Antetokounmpo at 26. Yes, I have Giannis over Charles Barkley already. I do believe he has already proven to be the 5th best power forward in NBA history. And spoiler alert, I think Giannis is going to retire as the 2nd best power forward in NBA history. Dude is a beast. 25 through 21 is John Havlicek, Dwayne Wade, Kawhi Leonard, Isaiah Thomas, and Chris Paul. John Havlicek is probably higher than most people have him. I just think this dude was really underrated throughout his career. He won a title in '74 as the only real star player on that team. Cowens wasn't really on that level quite yet. Hondo was just a beast, alright, and he was an underrated player in the Bill Russell era too, as he was generally the 2nd best player once Bob Cousy had fallen off in the mid-60s. Absolute beast of a player, but if you have him several spaces lower, I'm not going to fight you on it. And then lastly, for controversy here, Chris Paul. Maybe this is higher than some people have him. Maybe this is lower than some people have him. I don't really know. After this season and this finals run, I have him just barely ahead of Isaiah Thomas for being the 5th best point guard in NBA history. But if you disagree, I mean, they're basically interchangeable, okay? They're right next to each other. I do think Chris Paul will definitely retire as the better point guard, though, because he's just going to keep putting up stats for the next couple of years. Chris Paul at 21, all right? Moving into the top 20, we have numbers 11 through number 20. Reading from the bottom, alright? Kevin Durant at 20. Probably going to cause some controversy. 19 is Karl Malone. Oscar Robertson at 18. Dirk Nowitzki at 17. Moses Malone at 16. Kevin Garnett is at 15. Dr. Julius Erving at 14. Jerry West is 13. Steph Curry is 12. And Wilt Chamberlain is just barely outside my top 10 at number 11. So let's start with Kevin Durant here, shall we? Many people have Kevin Durant higher than this, and for the record, if you have him over both Karl Malone and Oscar Robertson, I will not fight you on it, okay? They're pretty much, again, similar to CP3 and Isaiah Thomas, pretty much interchangeable. Whole lot of all-time great players, but you can switch them around. It is not a big deal for me. However, Dirk Nowitzki, Moses Malone, KG, Dr. J, Jerry West, Steph Curry, undisputably better than Kevin Durant, okay? Especially Steph Curry. I cannot believe there are people out there who have Kevin Durant rated higher than Steph Curry all time. Steph Curry was the best player on the Warriors every single year Kevin Durant was there. He was the engine that made that team run. Kevin Durant benefited more from playing with Steph Curry than Steph Curry benefited from playing with Kevin Durant, okay? And then these other guys, they just had great title runs. They had higher peaks, in my opinion, better defenders. Julius Erving was just absolutely ridiculous, especially when you take his ABA career into what's the word I'm looking for here? And when you factor in his ABA career, okay? I can't think of the word for some reason. That's kind of cheating, because this is an NBA list, but sue me, that's what I do. I like Julius Erving a lot, okay? Jerry West was a beast. Oscar Robertson was a beast, but he just didn't accomplish nearly as much. Dirk Nowitzki had probably the 2nd greatest title run of all time. Moses Malone won 3 MVPs. Steph Curry is probably going to retire, at least at number 11 on my list. I have Wilt over him now just because Curry just doesn't have a finals MVP. I know it's petty, but, you know, it's just kind of strange that he was never the clear best player on any of those teams when they won a title. And even the years they lost, like 2016, the finals MVP wasn't going to him either, so that's a thing. And then Wilt Chamberlain. Look, there was a time when I had Wilt Chamberlain as high as number 3 on my all-time list, I swear. I used to be so high on this dude, but the more I learn about him, the more I see that for most of his career he was a bad teammate and a playoff choker. This dude consistently underperformed in the playoffs every single season. He did it on the Sixers, on the Warriors, he did it a couple times even on the Lakers. Although on the Lakers he was usually injured when it happened, but still, this dude he just wasn't as good as many people think he was. Alright, he didn't play winning basketball, and when he did, then he started getting injured in the later portions of his career, and he wasn't putting up these crazy stats. And if you want to see more about his stats, I have a video that I made very recently on what Wilt Chamberlain's stats are when you adjust them to the modern NBA, and while they're still very incredible, They're not 50 points and 25 rebounds, okay? So Wilt Chamberlain is outside of my top 10. And getting into the top 10, alright? Michael Jordan at 1, LeBron James at 2, Tim Duncan at 3, which many people might not agree with, Kareem at 4, Bill Russell at 5, Magic at 6, Bird at 7, Hakeem at 8, Shaq at 9, and Kobe Bryant is at number 10. The Kobe fans are upset, and look, let's just be real here. Kobe Bryant had the lowest peak, the weakest and worst peak out of anyone in this top 10, okay? Can we all just agree with that? Can we all just be honest here on that? And I value peaks very highly, which is why I currently have Shaq over Kobe, even though he had a shorter peak and accomplished less in his career. Because at his absolute peak, Shaq was absolutely ridiculous. However, I think Hakeem Olajuwon might have had a better peak simply because of his two-way impact. Arguably the greatest defensive player of all time, he did have the undisputed greatest title run of all time, so I have Hakeem at 8. Magic and Bird, pretty much switchable, okay? You can change them, pretty much interchangeable is what I meant to say. You can switch them back and forth, doesn't matter to me. I give the edge to Magic purely because Bird's career was cut short by injuries sooner than Magic's was. I know he got HIV later, but Bird spent the last few seasons of his career not playing at a superstar level anymore because of his back injuries. Magic didn't have that thing, although at their peak, I do think Larry Bird was the better player. Have to give the edge to Magic, though. Bill Russell, he won a ton of titles. If you want to see, I mean, look, I'm sure many people don't agree with it, but Bill Russell's defensive impact was the greatest of all time. I'm not necessarily saying he's a better defender than Hakeem, because Hakeem was probably a better defender in space. We don't really know, but he didn't have to deal with a three-point line at all, so I'm just assuming. But look, if you look at the advanced stats, if you're an advanced stat person, it's pretty much impossible to come to the conclusion that Bill Russell was not the best defensive player ever, because his defensive impact crushes anyone else, okay? I don't remember if it's defensive win shares or plus minus or what, but Bill Russell's literally makes the person in number 2, who is Hakeem, look like, it's like Hakeem's is like 1/5 of Bill Russell's or something. This man had such an absurdly good defensive impact. It's so underrated, okay? This man would still be the best defensive player in the NBA if he came in right now. Absolute monster. Not to mention, maybe the most clutch player in NBA history. He went to 10 Game 7s and won all 10 of them. That's how good this man was, okay? That is how freaking good Bill Russell was. However, I do still have Kareem as the best center in NBA history. If you want accolades, Kareem's got them. You want titles, Kareem's got them. Not as many as Bill Russell, but still. You want big stats, Kareem's got them. The dude did it all. But I do not have him at number 3 over Tim Duncan, who I think gets seriously underrated. This man was a monster. Easily the best defensive player to never win a Defensive Player of the Year, when it existed, of course, not saying he's a better defender than Bill Russell. He's a monster. He does everything you want. Tim Duncan made Greg Popovich great. Rusty Buckets covered a lot about Greg Popovich in a recent video called, like, The Two Sides of Greg Popovich. This dude was phenomenal. He won 5 titles and 6 finals appearances. He kept the Spurs at a super high winning level. He came into the league as an MVP player and was an MVP player until the last 2 seasons of his career. MVP caliber player, that is. He never had a season that was less than the equivalent of a 50-win season in his entire career. This man is so underrated, so freaking good. Tim Duncan is the 3rd greatest player in NBA history. And finishing off with Michael Jordan at number 1 and LeBron at number 2. For the record, I believe LeBron will retire as the greatest player in NBA history, but right now, I still believe it's Michael Jordan. Now, if you disagree, again, pretty much interchangeable. LeBron has had an incredible career. I don't think there's an argument for anyone other than LeBron and Michael Jordan at number 1 and number 2. If you think it's someone else, I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure you're wrong, though. But, look, I still have MJ at number 1, but assuming LeBron stays relatively healthy, he keeps building up on those totals, he keeps making finals runs, I do believe that LeBron James will retire as the greatest player in NBA history. But for right now, I still believe it's MJ. So yeah, thank you all for watching this video. I really appreciate you sticking around to the end. I know this is a much longer video than usual, but I tried my best to not make it too lengthy. Again, if you enjoyed, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I put a lot of work into this video, so I would really appreciate it. And whatever you disagree with, just let me know in the comments. If you could do it without calling me a stupid idiot, I would doubly appreciate that. But whatever you say, I do like to talk about basketball, as you all know, so I would love to debate these rankings in the comments. Thank you all again for watching, and have a good rest of your day.